Hello there and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with community experts about their life journeys and how they came into the community world. And today we have a conversation with Tim McDonald, a LIFEaholic, co-host of a Community Manager live show, co-creator of CreatingIs LLC and LIFEworking, AmBADASSador for Fight Colorectal Cancer, leader, blogger, motivational speaker, a community expert with over 15 years of experience, and just an amazing person I had the luck to meet recently. So, hello, team.
Hello, Yuri. How are you?
Yeah, I'm rather fine. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. We got some cold weather down in Tampa, Florida here. Well, cold for us is like 54 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not too bad even for most people in the States. They would consider that warm this time of year, but it's a little bit cool for us, but it's only going to last for a couple of days. So.
Yeah, then you will have winter, so totally. Okay, so I have this first question for you. You have a tattoo, "Let the world feel your heartbeat." Tell me its story.
I went to a conference several years back, and I met a gentleman there who was working for Global Hope Network International and also owned a coffee company called Pangea Coffee. And it was the first time I met him. I met him at the conference. And at that conference, I got asked to become part of a nonprofit here in the US called No Kid Hungry. And fast forward a year, I saw him again because we remained in contact online and stuff. And he just said, "How's everything going? What have you observed with your involvement with No Kid Hungry?" Because he was a supporter of them too. And I said, this amazing thing happened when I first started posting about No Kid Hungry. And I'll focus on Facebook, but I started posting things on Facebook, and a couple people would like it. And then a few more people would like it. And I said, and then gradually over time, the more I kept posting about No Kid Hungry, the more people would start commenting on it. And then after they started commenting on it, then they'd start sharing it. I said, but then this amazing thing started happening was everybody would be out at a restaurant, be at an airport or a train station, see a billboard, see a sign, see a sticker on a door or a placard on a table. And they'd be like, take a picture of it because it said raising funds for No Kid Hungry or an ad for No Kid Hungry. And they'd post it on their wall and then tag me in their post. So now all their friends were seeing it instead of just my friends seeing it. And he looked at me and he said, "You know what that is, Tim? You let the world feel your heartbeat. You didn't have to get up on a soapbox and yell at the top of your lungs. You were just consistent with it, and people got to know you, and they trusted that this was important to you. And if it became something that they could associate with, it became important to them. And that's all because you let the world feel your heartbeat." And so it took me a couple years, but that's how I ended up getting a tattoo.
Yeah. And what was exactly the moment when you decided to do it?
My first tattoo I ever got was, and I don't know if I'm gonna, but it was a semicolon. Mm-hmm. It's upside down because it's like when I look at it, that's the semicolon that I got there. And that was from Project Semicolon, which is an organization that helps prevent suicide prevention and mental health issues. And I read about that, and I've always wanted a tattoo my entire life, but I knew once you get one, it's permanent, right? And I didn't want to get one when I was in my teens or my 20s because I knew my life might change, which it has. But I wanted something that I knew, for the rest of my life, I'd be happy with. It would have a meaning for me. And so I had dealt with depression and suicide before. And I just was like, when I became aware of Project Semicolon, I was just like, I want to get that tattoo on my arm. I got that. I had that for 2 years. And then I had the bug that I wanted to do something else. And I remembered these words that he told me. So this is several years later, maybe 5 years later. But I wanted the words, but I also wanted something. I just didn't want words on my arm. I wanted something to go along with it. And I was going back and forth. I was asking some of my friends that were artists if they had any ideas, talking with a couple tattoo artists. But long story short is I was doing a Google search and for an image, I think it was on Unsplashed, and I saw this person reach out their arm with the tattoo of the world on it. And I'm like, that's perfect. Let the world feel your heartbeat right over the map of the world, and I'll do my whole forearm with it. And so it was probably about 6 to 7 years after he told me that line that I actually got the tattoo. But I knew I wanted it for ever since I got that first one. So it took me about 2 or 3 years after I got the first one to know and actually get the full one that said "Let the world feel your heartbeat" on my arm.
Would you like to have any more tattoos in the future?
Oh yeah, I actually have one that I have an idea for. But since I know you and I talked about this before we went live, but and recorded, but I do have stage 4 colon cancer, and I'm undergoing chemo treatments. And I was planning on getting a tattoo on my other arm, and talked to the tattoo artist. Loved what he was doing. He doesn't even show you the image until you go in to get your tattoo. You know, he's one of those kind of people. But his wife owns the shop. And so she called in one day to say, hey, maybe we should reschedule this. And I'm like, well, I can't because I got chemo this week. And she goes, if you're undergoing chemo, we can't do it. I'm the owner of the shop. We do not take that liability. We're not, unless if you get a note signed from your doctor that you can get a tattoo, we're not doing it. And I was devastated at the time, but if everything goes right, you know, maybe next year at some point I'll be able to get the tattoo. But I came to learn that it's not what's on my arm, it's what I believe inside that matters. And if I can share that story in other ways just than having it ink on my arm, that's what matters. But the other one was going to be about it was incorporating a couple different themes, but the main theme was like creating ripples. So having ripples on my arm, because every action in life that we take creates a ripple that other people feel. And the more ripples we create, it's kind of like let the world feel your heartbeat, but in a different way, because these can be, you know, not only actions, but words or anything that we do. When we are able to start, you know, putting things out in the world and do it repetitively, we need to trust that other people are going to see those in other parts of the world that we never even know about. And when I say world, it could be across the globe or it can be across your town, right? It doesn't have to be like anything, you know, world changing. It can just be changing your own little community or your own block that you live on. But when you create those ripples and do them consistently enough, other people want to start creating their ripples. And all of a sudden those ripples turn into waves, and wave is a movement. And a movement is what people actually see. But you need to trust that you're creating the ripples that will inspire others to create their ripples that together will create that. Because if you don't start, nobody else is going to start until they have somebody to follow.
Yeah, totally. Or they can be in different places of the world and their ripples will never get together.
Right. Never find each other. So if you don't share yours, nobody's ever going to find you.
Yeah. And with social media, it's rather easy, you know, you just post it out.
It's a lot easier than it used to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, I'm going to date myself now, but this was back in 1984 or 3, I think. I was in high school, and I think I was a sophomore. Now, we had like a Commodore 64 that was like a gaming system plus computer, you know, very early stages. But I was on our yearbook club, and I was helping with our yearbooks. And as a result, what we did was we traded with other schools from around. I grew up in the Chicago area, so with other schools from around. And I found this picture of this girl who was like in my grade, and I thought was absolutely beautiful. And it wasn't like, you know, we didn't have like, you know, Google where you could just go on and search somebody's name. Now you actually need to have yellow pages, the book, you know, or the white pages to be able to open it up. Well, she lived outside of my town, so I didn't have the white pages for there. So I actually had to go to the library and get another book, another phone book, to look up her name and number, and called her out of the blue and asked if I could come get together with her. And my mom actually had to drive me down to go meet this girl one night. But that just goes to show, like, social media, that's what I had to do back in the day. This is what we're able to do with social media in seconds now. What took me hours and days before, I could do in minutes and seconds today.
And did that girl answer you like yes from the
Yeah,
first
I
try?
actually, she said, come on over and let's meet. And I never saw her again, but it was, I mean, I thought it was pretty, I mean, at the time, I admit I felt like a complete nerd and like, totally dorky and, why would this girl ever want to see me again? But now I look at it and I got to give myself a lot of credit for being that young and being that forward to be able to not only see something, but then to take the action that I did to actually find out how to get in contact with her, and then to actually make the call to set up a time to go meet her. So I give myself a lot of credit for that. But it got me thinking a lot when you asked that question, because I was just thinking about this yesterday, just how times have changed, but the way I have been has always been the same. If I want to learn something, if I want to meet somebody, I will figure out a way to make that happen,
Did you think a lot before doing it, or you just did it right away?
Oh, I just did it right away.
Yeah, totally cool.
It wasn't about the obstacles that were in front of me. It was like, this is what I'm going to do. How do I get it done?
Totally. Yeah, now it's much easier just to reject, the request in social media. So I guess that girl had also hard times telling no, so she had to say yes. So, okay, let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your parents. Who were they?
Well, my mom and dad met when they were pretty young. My dad was working and my mom was still in school, I think, when they first met. And then she got out of school, got married. We lived in and grew up in the New Jersey area, right outside of New York, and then ended up moving to the Chicago area when I was 3. And my dad was always the type of person who he started at a company and worked his way up. And he was in distribution. He worked for Roche, which I'm sure you've heard of, and now they've split off in North America, and a lot of their products go under, what is it? A different company, I forget, Genentech or something, right? And on the pharmaceutical side, at least. And then, so he worked his way pretty high up to being a distribution manager in Chicago. And my mom was basically a stay-at-home mom and took care of us kids. And, then my dad got laid off because he actually created it was when they were doing their cost savings, kind of like we're seeing a lot of companies do now. And basically, I think it was in the 80s. So last time inflation was this bad, they were doing the same thing. And he came up with a suggestion that they consolidate their distribution facilities. They didn't need as many of them. And in turn, that meant he wouldn't have a job. And so he ended up, bouncing around from job to job, always looking for something to do. My mom and him got divorced. And so my mom started going back to work, at first part-time and then full-time. And, I was brought up in a very, they were always encouraging about doing well in school and participating in whatever sports we wanted to participate in. However, as I look back, I don't really think they fully embraced us with kind of stepping outside of the box and thinking differently, and I always had that urge to do that my entire life. And so as soon as I got old enough, when I got into high school, when I did these things, I started breaking out of that box and being like, I can get my, I don't want to go to college right out of high school. I want to take a semester off and see what I want to do. And so I got 2 jobs, and I was working as a handyman and as a wholesale newspaper delivery person. And, and then my friends came back for winter break and I said, I want to go to school. And they were like, okay, you can go. And so it was just all these things and ever since then, and I started kind of following my parents a little bit when I was young, because I got married young, I had kids young, and I started climbing the corporate ladder, right? And going to different companies to get higher positions. And I did that. I remember my first job, I went in and interviewed for an accounting position. And he said, well, I know you're good with numbers, but you mentioned a lot about being creative. And I want to have you talk to our estimating manager. And I'm like, what the hell is an estimator, right? And it was for a signage and graphic arts company. And I'm like, okay. And so I went and talked with him, and it was basically that, our art department comes up with concepts that our sales team brings from our clients. They lay it out. You kind of figure out the best way to kind of lay it out and nest it out for whatever procedures need to be done in the factory. And then put it into our estimating program, which was a spreadsheet, an electronic spreadsheet at the time, and determine what the material costs were, what the labor costs were, how many hours it would take to do, and then it would spit out a cost, and then we'd mark it up, and then our salesmen had a certain level that they could mark it down in. So I that's where I started, but then I got, promoted to assigned supervising manager, and then I got into one of our clients was making panels for British Petroleum when they did the bullnose canopies, back in the day. And so those aluminum composite materials, there was 3 different suppliers of those, and one of them I formed a good relationship with one of the salespeople and got that. And then I started working there and then moved up in that company. And so it's all these things, like I was doing all this to climb the corporate ladder. But then, probably after I started working on my own about 14 years ago, I think is when I first went out on my own, I just became like this person who never wanted to go back to work for a company again. And the only companies I've stayed at that I wanted to be part of is the one I'm at now, who is the best company I've ever been with. I was with Huffington Post, which I love being there, but I think my time there was about done after 2 years. And then I had a short stint at a local company here in Tampa, and that was the worst experience I think I've ever had in my life. And so over the last 12 years, I've gone from working on my own to working for a company to working on my own to working for a company to working on my own to working for a company. But where I'm at now and why I like it so much is they really allow us to kind of treat it like it's our own company within the, we're a startup. So everybody kind of takes ownership of what they do and what they're responsible for. And I don't think that's something that my parents really gave me. And that's like the one thing that I've been yearning for, I think, my entire life, is that kind of freedom to be expressive and have your ideas heard. And even if they don't conform with what the majority of our population seems to believe in. And so that's kind of always been my thing. And I love, connecting and embracing with other people that are in that field. And, because for most of us, most opportunities are not that accessible, because the most groups that are out there are based upon conformity. And I like finding groups that are based upon just show up as who you are, bring your ideas. We want to celebrate you. We want to celebrate your ideas. We want to bring them to life bigger than you could have done on your own. And that's kind of what I like being a part of today, that I don't think my parents gave me, but they gave me a very strong foundation for why I didn't want what they had, because I saw what my dad went through. There's no guarantee, right? You can work for a big company, have a great position, but then in a flip of a switch, you might not have a job again. And I don't believe that there's, running your own business or working for somebody else, there's no guarantees. But when you are able to kind of have your own freedoms, whether you're doing it on your own or working within an organization, that's what I embrace.
And what is the main difference for you between working on your own and working with an organization?
Well, the biggest thing why I like working with organizations is because you get the kind of the camaraderie, and everybody on your team has like different talents and skills. And so you don't need to be the expert in everything. Like, you can have your expertise, but then you can rely on somebody else on your team to have the other expertise to help out. So just in simple terms, let's just say, and I'm making this up, it's not where I'm at now, but we have somebody that does the technical stuff and builds stuff, right, for our organization. We have somebody who's great at graphics and does the graphics for our company. We have somebody who's, really good at the marketing side and does the marketing side of things, and what is that? And we have somebody that's really good on like the administrative and the billing stuff, and they take care of that. And I take care of more like the strategy and the connections and building the relationships with our clients and with our potential customers. And so that's like, to me, that's part of a team where if I had my own thing, I'd have to do all those things on my own or build up a big enough business where I could hire people. And when you start working with other people, I don't care if this is internal or external, it is really difficult to find people, A, that you can work with easily, and B, that do good work that matches what your vision is. I mean, it is so difficult to find those people, I mean, everybody says that they'll be able to do it for you, but then when you actually start engaging with them and working with them, you learn things that it's kind of like living with somebody, right? Like, I mean, I've never understood people that would not live together until they got married, because I wouldn't want to marry anybody unless I lived with them first and got to know who they were when they were sleeping, when they went to bed, when they got up in the morning, when they came home from work. I want to know that whole person. I don't want to know them just from us going out on dates and talking on the phone or having, video meetings with each other. I want to know each other from living in the same space together.
Yeah. It's like a trial version,
Yeah.
I totally understand you. And once you wrote Happy Father's Days to my dad, who left us too soon, and he left me with lessons I need to become the person I am today. And also you mentioned that I have a feeling you would still be proud and non-judgmental. So was your dad judgmental to you?
Well, I think that I'm trying to find a way to say this that won't come across too crass. After my parents got divorced, I ended up moving in with my dad and got to hear some things from his perspective of the divorce. Nothing disparaging about my mom, but just his side.
Yeah.
And it totally changed my perception of like who he was. And so while I don't think he was judgmental, I think the way that they parented together when they were together was judgmental, right? Because it was what they wanted, not what we wanted. And so that is judgment, right? when you project that onto other people. And so what he was trying to tell me though is he was on that and he didn't enjoy it because that's what my mom wanted. And so, as we got older, he started like, when I told him that I was going to get married, my ex-wife and I were high school sweethearts, and then we broke up in high school. And then I moved in to Nashville with my dad, and I was like, she called me up on the phone one day, and I hung up and I told my dad, if I get together with her, I'm going to end up marrying her. And he said, why are you saying that? But he didn't say you shouldn't do that. He said, why are you saying that? And that was the shift, right? That was the change of, I saw him in how he treated me now, even though I was more of an adult, but I was still a very young adult and I was still his child, that he became very less judgmental and more just, if he didn't understand, he was asking why. He wasn't telling me how to be. He was just asking me why. And so that brought us so much closer. And, it was about a month before he passed away. I remember him telling me that the one thing as a parent that he always wanted to see was his kids grow up and be successful. But he wasn't judging success and how much money we had, what kind of jobs we had. It's just that we were doing what we wanted in life. And he said he could be happy knowing that he raised 3 successful kids. And, to me, that was like, it was so nice to hear those words, because so often you don't hear them. You might learn about them later after they're gone, but you don't hear them before they leave. And so it was nice to hear that before he left. And I do feel like when I look back at him and see what I'm doing now and see how I'm dealing with, having stage 4 cancer, with, working on my own, with, not being the traditional person who saves up and has a big retirement account and has a big savings account. And, my wife and I like living life, and we like experiencing life while we're here. And we know we can't take the money with us, and we don't worry about what's going to happen if we don't have income coming in later. It's like, we'll figure it out when we get there. And so that's the type of people we are. And I know that he would be proud of me in that, even though that's not the way he was. It's not the way my brother is, and it's not the way my sister is, but it's the way I am. And I know he'd be proud of that. So.
Totally. And what age you were when your parents divorced?
Oh, I think it was right around 18 or 19 when they divorced. So I was basically a senior in high school. My brother was a junior, and my sister was a freshman. So he basically would have gotten divorced earlier. He was hoping to wait until all of us made it through high school, but it just got to a point where, they just couldn't be together. And so he ended up leaving after I was basically done with high school.
Yes. And how did you feel about that?
I blamed him at the time. Well, because he cheated, with his secretary and, some other people that I became aware of later on. And he ended up marrying one of his secretaries when I was in Nashville at a different company, but, it was after he was divorced. But, so I didn't really, I did see my dad every once in a while when I was forced to go with my brother and sister to see him. I didn't really talk to him on the phone that much. I was very much a supporter of my mom's. And then it was like when I went to school and came back to Chicago and was with my mom, there was just a situation that happened that like really, I didn't view it as being fair, for me and my friend, where she set different standards for my brother and his friend compared to me and my friend, because we were long hair, earrings, smoking, drinking. My brother might have been drinking, but he was, very clean cut. His friends were clean cut. And so I just, I felt like, she was applying different standards just because of who we were, not because of what she believed in. And so that really showed me a side that I said, I don't want to really be around this anymore. And so that's when I didn't have anybody to turn to. I turned back to my dad, and my dad just opened up and, welcomed me in. And that's when I moved to Nashville and got back with him and spent a couple of years with him before I ended up getting married. So it was a nice time, and because he ended up passing away about 5 years after I got married. So it was nice that I was able to have that time with him and continue that relationship after I was married that was much more open and receiving than it was about judging and controlling.
Also, you wrote about your mom that anyone who met her became a friend for life, and her positive outlook and smile were contagious. So tell me, what did you learn from her?
Well, it's funny. She had a lot of things going on, but she had congestive heart failure, kidney disease, and Alzheimer's. And so her Alzheimer's, even before we knew she had Alzheimer's, it was just like her group of friends, whether she was in church, whether they went up to Arizona for the winters and started meeting people out at their community where they lived, people in the neighborhood, wherever it was, she just always had this, anybody that she came in contact with would always walk away and just what a pleasant person she was and how, nice she was. And, it really felt like she made you feel like you were a friend the first time you met her. And even when she had Alzheimer's and we went out to visit her several times when she got in the hospital, and I was like, she'd be like dozing off for, an hour. Somebody would walk in the room and they'd be like, "How are you, Barb?" And she'd be like, "I'm wonderful," with this big smile on her face. And you knew she wasn't wonderful, but that's what she'd tell the other people. And so it's just that and my sister asked if I would help write her obituary. And I wrote that sentence down without thinking about it. But then I thought about it and I'm like, this is what so many people tell me about myself, is like that I have a contagious smile, that my kindness is, like they don't know anybody else that has the sense of kindness and the giving capacity that I do. And, just that I'm so easy to get along with. And I'm like, as I wrote that about my mom, I'm like, this is what people are saying about me. So this is something that I must have gotten from my mom.
And are you also the same person who smiles even though it's not that good?
Yeah, but I'm also not afraid to cry. I'm not afraid to not smile. I mean, some people are like, like if we're doing certain things, they'll be like, "Man, I can tell you're not your normal self," or "I can tell your energy's way down." And I'm like, yeah, but that's part of being human, right? I mean, if I smiled the whole time and I was laughing the whole time and I was happy the whole time, I wouldn't know what pain and sorrow were. And without knowing what pain and sorrow are, I don't know how good it feels to be happy and feel joy. And so I need to experience both of these things in order to know what each of them feel like. Otherwise, I forget that movie that, I'm forgetting the name. Jeff, I'm forgetting his name, but he was in a movie. He's a famous US actor. He's in a lot of different stuff, and he's a musician. But he was in this movie, and it was where all the characters were in black and white, and you can only say nice things, and you couldn't swear, you couldn't, but everything was in black and white. And then these kids, these teenagers, found him in this library where they got exposed to books, and all of a sudden, as they started reading books, color started appearing. But it was because there was pain, that there was, in addition to the joy and the happiness. So in other words, they didn't want to live this linear life. They wanted to live this non-linear life that takes circles and turns and ups and downs. And that was I think it was called The Giver, actually, was the name of the movie. But that's kind of like how I view life. And so, even though I am smiling most of the time, and I try and bring myself in that way to a lot of people, the people that truly know me and that get to, that I work with, that I live with, that I'm good friends with, they know, and they've seen another side of me that isn't always that happy, uplifting, smiling person. It's the person who, isn't feeling good. I'm in a down mood. I don't want to talk to anybody right now. I don't want to share my feelings. I don't want to explain anything. I just want to be in my own world. It won't last forever. It's just going to be a short time, but I just need to be here right now. And so, it's really important to me to convey that even though people see me and maybe other people in their lives as being this always happy person, know that you're only seeing us for a fraction of the moment. And in our real lives, we are just as human as anybody else, and have our down moments and aren't smiling and aren't always happy. And I always caution that, because I think too many people are promoting happiness and joy and, not fearing and all these things. And, I don't disagree with the general premise, but I don't think that's something we should try and achieve or strive for. We should strive to create a balance in our lives so that we're not hitting too high of highs and we're not hitting too low of lows, and we're not staying in either one of those places for too long, because that's not a healthy way to live. That becomes where we get into that black and white zone where our life is very much the same the entire time, day after day. And to me, that just reminds me of commuting in New York City each day, where it was like watching a herd of cattle going out of the train station in the morning and into the train station at night. It's just like nobody pays attention to anybody else. It's just like they're just moving like cattle being hoarded into the stalls. And I don't want to live like that way. I want to be I want to be up and I want to be down. I want to be up more than I'm down, but I want to be both, because if I don't experience both, I don't know what the joy of the other is.
Who are those people you can talk to when you are down?
Well, I definitely have a couple people, and it depends on what it is. I say my wife gets the worst and the best of me, because she gets to hear some things I don't tell anybody else, but she also has to deal with some of the stuff that probably nobody else gets to hear. I have a good friend who is much in line with my way of thinking of, how the world can be different, and that everything that we live in currently has been constructed by man. And if we constructed it, and I use man in a very non-sexual way, just it was created by people, and people have the capacity to change it. And most of us look on how we can fix it. And we don't want to fix something that's broken. We want to create something new. And so that's her way of looking at things. And I just believe in that so much myself. And so a lot of conversations that I have with her about, kind of like the emotional trauma that you kind of go through by realizing some of these things and understanding that, just recently I was learning about a couple of potential donors for me for a new liver were not matches for me. And even though I thought they were going to be, all the initial stuff indicated that they were, I found out that they weren't. And the first couple, I was like, planning out, okay, if they get this done by this time, I should be able to get the surgery by this time, I'll be home by this time, blah, blah, blah. And then recently it was just like, the same thing went over again. And then just this morning it happened again where I found out somebody wasn't going to be. But I told my wife, I said, yes, I'm disappointed about learning about this. But the whole thing is that I've come to realize when I started focusing on who was going to be my donor and when it was going to happen, I started losing focus on if it's going to happen. And when I focus on the if, I can solely put my energy and my focus into believing that this is going to happen. But when you get into who it's going to be and when it's going to be, all the what ifs come into play, and your fear starts telling you, well, what if it doesn't happen? What if this isn't the right person? What if you don't get it by this time? What if, all these things come in. And when you're so focused on that, you can't focus on this is going to happen. It doesn't matter who, it doesn't matter when. You just need to believe it's going to happen and make it happen. And so like in that mindset, that energy shift in my body, I can have those conversations with my good friend about that. And then obviously there's I belong to a men's cancer group, and it's all emotional support group. So like if I'm sharing something that I'm going through that I don't want to talk to my wife about, I can post it in that group and it's private, and whatever stays there, it remains there. People are, hey, yeah, I feel the same way, or I'm going through this, or, I know what you're feeling, even though I haven't been through this. And so you get validation for how you're feeling. And that, I think those are out of the three primary areas in my life right now, those are the three people and or groups that I really can kind of open up when I'm not in this happy, smiley, joyful place that I usually am.
Yeah. And tell me more about your relationships with fear.
Well, it's interesting. I'll try and be as short as I can on this and as clear as I can on this. Fear in my mind is broken into two different types of fear. We have a rational fear and an irrational fear. Now, our rational fear are things like, jumping out of an airplane without a parachute, punching a tiger in the face, running in front of a train when it's, coming at 50 miles an hour at you, right? On the tracks. Those are all rational fears that you are going to do yourself harm or get killed if you do these things. And so you don't want to do them for those reasons. Irrational fear are more things like, I'm not good enough. I don't have enough. I'm not successful enough. I can't do this. I'm not worthy of receiving this. All those things are irrational fears. What our fear is so good at, both our irrational and our rational, but especially our irrational fear, is telling our minds and ourselves that all these things that are irrational are rational. And they're really not. Who says that you're not good enough? Who says that you're not successful enough? Who says that you're not worthy enough? You're making that up. And now I do think that fear has a very good place in trying to protect you, because its main mission is not to see you get hurt. And that's why we need fear, right? We don't want to remove fear completely, because if we remove the rational fear, we can end up killing or hurting ourselves very badly. So we don't want to do that. But we need to remind our irrational fear that there have been other situations that fear warned us about before that ended up working out fine. It might not have been easy to get through, but it worked out fine. And so just trust me on this and let me do what I want to do. And if I'm wrong, you can come back and tell me I was wrong next time. But for now, just let's see how it plays out. And usually when I have those, I started journaling this out, actually talking with my fear, can I talk to you, fear? Fear, yes. What do you want to talk about? Blah, blah, blah. I'd write this whole conversation out. Now I just have them in my head, and they usually don't take 15, 20 minutes. They usually take 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And but it's taken years to get to that point. But that's the main thing I think that that we get held up on is that we are either told that, we shouldn't be afraid of anything. And I don't think that's healthy advice, because that means that you will do things. If you're not afraid of anything, you are going to do things that are going to hurt or kill you. But what we need to start understanding is what's showing up as irrational fear, identifying them as irrational fears, and then working with our rational fear and our ego to understand that we have permission to change that narrative. And when we can start doing that with our irrational fears, that's when we start to see new opportunities, new possibilities come up that we never thought would be in front of us before. And so it's so important for me to get people to understand that, because that's what holds most of us back from doing something. And I think another big part of that too is like, it's the fear of not reaching my goal. Right. And this is a big one for people. And I kind of butcher the story a little bit, so I've made it my own, but I heard it from somewhere years ago where there was this guy at the bottom of a mountain, right? And he was looking at the top, and, he got injured, and his whole goal was to get to the top of the mountain. And, he kept trying to move, and he couldn't even move. And he just wanted to take one step forward and one step forward. But he found every step that he took forward was like a bigger rock that he needed to come up. And eventually he couldn't do it. And so he just had to take the path of least resistance. And he started going to the side. And when he got to the side, he found this beautiful lake with all these trees and vegetation around it, and all these animals and life forms, and realized that that's where he was meant to be. It was never supposed to be at the top of the mountain. And so when I encourage people, it's not about, your celebration isn't when you get to the top of the mountain. Your celebration is when you take that first movement to move somewhere closer to it or away from it, so that you can see a different perspective of how might be an easier way to get there. That's what you should be celebrating, all those little moments that you're taking each day that help you get a step closer to where you want to be, even if that where you want to be might be completely different than where you started from.
You never know. So it's just your path.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know until we know. And I mean, sometimes that takes getting to the location that we initially thought, but a lot of times it takes being open to going in a direction that we didn't even know existed before. And that's, I mean, at least in my life and my experiences, that's where the best opportunities have come from, when I've gone in the direction that I didn't know existed before. And that's what worked out best for me.
What can make you laugh to tears?
Usually it's pretty stupid things. My wife thinks I'm crazy sometimes at some of the things I just laugh at, but I really laugh at a lot of commercials nowadays, just because I think they're so stupid. It's like, here I am seeing an ad of, what I need to save for my retirement, starting at age 30. And here I am 54 and hardly have anything in my retirement, and I'm like, this commercial is not for me. Why do they advertise this, making you think this is what you need? Or the big one is like pharmaceutical drugs, right? And they go through and they tell you like how this can help with your side effects from taking this other medication if you have this disease, but it also has all these other side effects. And so now I'm like, what's going to be the next commercial that's going to come on that's going to tell us what the next medication is going to be to offset these side effects? And it's like, I'm just like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And so all I can do is like laugh, and they really make me laugh pretty hard sometimes. I mean, depending on the commercial that I'm looking at, because I'm just like, and then the sad part of this, right, is like, how many people actually believe in this and take it to heart? And that's like what scares me. But it doesn't scare me because I think there's enough people that are opening our eyes, becoming more conscious about these things, where we don't have to believe everything that we see or hear that's on digital media. We can do our own research. We can come up with our own beliefs. We can start talking with people that we trust and learn things that aren't being marketed towards us. And that to me is like, I mean, so a lot of those things make me laugh, but then it also turns into a more serious thing too.
Yeah. And you recently shared a photo of your dog, and you wrote, "People aren't the only ones who look at me like I'm crazy." So what are those crazy stuff you are doing so people are looking you? Oh, even your dog is looking you this that way.
I think she was looking at me because like I was like playing or saying, or she wanted me to play, or I was saying something, and she just like cocks her head sideways, and I'm just like, but it made me think of like how many people think of me as crazy, right? It's like, I mean, I haven't had a traditional career path. I mean, I posted on LinkedIn not too long ago that, one thing I'll never get in life is a lifetime achievement award or 25 years service at any company. Yeah. And I'm perfectly fine with that, but a lot of people, that's like crazy, right? I mean, like that's what they wanted for their entire lives, was to work at one company or in one industry and just work up the career path all the way through. And that's not me. And a lot of people think I'm crazy for not wanting to work at a place that pays me the most money. I don't want to work at the place that makes me the most money. I want to work at a place that pays me what I'm worth, but more importantly, that is a place that I enjoy being a part of, that I feel like I'm a contributor to, not just, a cog in the wheel of the machine. And so those things are more important for me. But, so many people look at these things as like, being crazy. And I mean, being, my own boss and, having my own businesses and doing all that. And it's like, I don't do them to become like, to sell them or to franchise them or anything like that. I'm just doing it to have my enough. And a lot of people don't understand that because they always think you need to have more and more and more and more. And I'm like, but why? I mean, we don't need more and more and more. I only need what I need. I don't need anything more. And, a lot of times we think we do because we see what other people are posting. And most of the time, the people that post these things have never done those things. They're not their actual cars. They're not their actual airplanes. They're not their actual second homes. They either photoshopped it or got a photo op with somebody's place. And it's like, if you really think about what you have to do to get to there, I mean, it might be for you. It's not for me, right? I don't want to be working 18 out of 24 hours in a day. I don't want to be, hustling around the country, flying to meet somebody in the morning and then being somewhere else for dinner and then being, somewhere else the next morning. I mean, that's not my lifestyle. I like going on vacation and being there for 5 to 7 days and relaxing and getting to meet people and experience the culture that I'm in, and not just popping in and popping out. And I don't want to be on meetings, 12 hours a day. I don't want to have my calendar booked out every single day. I mean, somebody just asked me if I had like a calendar, system that I used, and we do for work, we do for clients that we have, but my personal one, I don't have one set up because, like, it's kind of like when we did this, right? It was like, hey, are you good this time? And I'm like, yeah, here's a good time. And you're like, oh, that works out perfect. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. Whereas a lot of other people, they have that structure and they need to find the time that matches with you and them. And I'm just like, just pick up the phone and call me or text me if it's a good time. And if I have the time, I'll talk, I don't need to plan this out, and a lot of people look at me crazy because I'm not that structured and organized. But I was that way for so long, and I don't like living my life that way. I like if you're in town, Yuri, in Tampa here, and you say, hey, Tim, I'm in town. I had a conference I'm going to. I got the afternoon off. You want to meet for a coffee or a late lunch somewhere? And I look at my calendar and I don't have anything. I'd be like, sure, let's do it. But if I was the type of person that had to have that calendar, I probably would have something filled out. And I'd probably say, Yuri, you couldn't have booked this unless if you asked me 48 hours in advance or 24 hours in advance, because my calendar system doesn't allow you to book anything that quick. And I'm like a spur of the moment kind of guy. So if you're here, let's do it if we both can,
Yeah. So sometimes people need to have time to add time to calendar. So yeah, it's like, anyway.
Well, I used to take pride in having a full calendar, and now I take pride in having nothing on my calendar.
In the interview with Michael Chestnut for the intentional guy, you said that you have a temper. So tell me more about that.
I still have a temper, but my temper is a lot better than it used to be. I used to have a lot of things that would happen that would trigger me into having a very emotional and reactive response to things. And a lot of times, I got better at that as I got divorced and met my new wife and have been with her. But she always not always, mostly was the bearer of most of my, temper. And I didn't like it, and I knew she didn't like it. We've talked about it. I mean, she expressed that, and I didn't like the way I felt after I did it. And so when I was at HuffPost, I started learning about kind of this consciousness and mindfulness, arena. And one of the techniques that I read about was how when you feel yourself starting to get that reaction, your emotions boil up and you're going to react, is stop and count to 10. And at first it was really difficult. So you don't beat yourself up if you can't get to 10. Maybe you count to 3, maybe you count to 5. You work your way up to 10, right? But by the time you get to 10, what starts happening is your emotions kind of subside. You didn't react one way, and you have the opportunity now that your emotions are a little subside to say, I've been in this situation before. I've reacted the same way each time, and I've gotten the same result each time. The only thing I know is if I try something else, I don't know what's going to happen. But if I try the same thing, I know the result I'm going to get that I'm not going to be happy with. So why don't we try something else? And I'll try a different way to approach it. And some have worked, some haven't, but none of them got me back to that place where it was like still raised tensions even higher. And so now I'm much better. My wife actually recognizes this in me, because a lot of times it's not at her, but like if I'm trying to do something, trying to put something together, trying to, assemble something, or I'm working on something or trying to call somebody and they're not giving me the responses, she'll see my temper starting to come up. And sometimes she'll just, wait until I'm done, wait until it passes, and then say, you just need to calm down. Other times she's like, just step away from it for a minute. And, so she's starting to be my partner in helping me when it does come up now, and it happens a lot less frequently and usually not to the same extent, and thankfully not directed at her as much as it used to be. But that's just a simple way that I think that I've, I've recognized my temper. I understand the unhealthy, factor it can play in your relationships, and wanted to change it, and then learning how to change that in my life.
What do you do when you have a sleepless night?
I don't have too many. I sleep pretty good these days, which most people think is a little crazy considering everything I've been through the last couple of years. But when I do something now that is different than what I used to do. I don't try and force myself back to sleep. I will actually get up out of bed and go downstairs and just be on my computer and get some stuff done, read some emails, whatever it is. And then usually after about an hour or 2 hours, I'll be tired and go back to bed. So instead of fighting not being able to sleep, I actually take advantage of not being able to sleep. And then if I get tired enough, I can go back to sleep.
Okay. Also, you shared that when you knew about the cancer and you had a conversation with your wife, that you told her, like, it's not the end, it's just the start of a journey you didn't ask to be on, but have to be on. And when this doctor told you that you have 3 years to live, you told that it's your story, not mine. So how do you have such a mindset?
Well, I think it comes from back when I started that whole thing at HuffPost with the mindfulness and consciousness, because if we look at life, and I kind of view everything as like, you can kind of sum it up like if you have 2 magnets, right? I think I might actually have 2 magnets. I do. Look at this. I got 2 magnets. We can do it. So if you have 2 magnets, right, like they attract together, it's hard to pull them apart, actually, like they attract. Now, if you turn one around, you can't even get them to stick, right? I mean, they want to force their way around. So the way to look at this is you are one magnet, the situation or the other person is the other magnet, and everything surrounding us is our environment. Now, in the moment, the only thing we have control over is ourselves, right? And so what we can do is we can attract, but if we're repelling and we want to not repel. We just need to change ourselves by 180 degrees and we'll attract. Now you notice neither of these magnets changed. You didn't change who you were. You didn't change the environment that you were in. The only thing you changed was your approach. And in life, that's like what I've kind of learned. And when I was diagnosed with cancer and when I heard that I had 3 years to live, that mindset came on that, regardless of the situation I was in, regardless of the news that I was going to be heard, me not connecting with that news and trying to repel against it was not going to do me any good. All it was going to do is throw me into an arena where I was going to be blaming somebody, blaming something, blaming myself, wishing I would have done something different, wishing somebody would have diagnosed me sooner, all these things. And, I realized none of those things are going to change where I'm at right now. And so all I can deal with is right now, here I am. And if I want to be around for a little bit longer, what do we need to do? What's the next step I need to take in order to see the next day? And that's kind of my whole philosophy through this whole process has just been, I've learned more about what I'm going through and the transplant process and everything else that most people don't even, never knew. And I never wished to know all this, but I've become so educated in the system because that education helps me become more aware of what's going to be the healthiest choice for me for the next step. And so for me, it was all about getting the chemo, getting the right type of chemo treatment at the right type of cancer center, and then having good results from that. And then pursuing getting a liver transplant, which is not offered at my cancer center. There's only 14 places in the US, or as of the end of last year, that do these for metastasized cancer patients. And so I searched out who one of the best ones were, got in contact with them, started going through the process of determining if I was going to be a potential candidate for it. And then in March of this year, I was determined I was a candidate and started all the stuff I needed to do and starting searching for a donor. And it's all living donor. So you can't, get on a list or anything. You need to actually find somebody, and the liver regenerates itself. So, anybody that's 5'3" to 6'10", with A or O blood type and doesn't have cancer, diabetes, heart or kidney disease is an eligible donor for me. And if you're between the ages of 18 and 60. So those are the main requirements. I mean, there's other stuff, but that's enough. If you're interested, you can call. And it's just been the process of learning all that. And, just recently I've just learned about this whole thing about, and I think we talked about it, but this, not worrying about the expectations of who and when. It's just a matter of believing that it's going to happen. And I was in that at the beginning. And then I had some, what I considered setbacks, or what my ego was telling me were setbacks. And now I've shifted that into, no, these weren't setbacks. This is just part of the journey that we're on. This is just part of what we're experiencing and going through. And it's making me a healthier person to understand that, those are, many people look at them as setbacks. To me, it's not a setback. It's just one step closer to the next step. And we'll get there, and we're going to find that one person, because that's all it takes is one person. It doesn't take a whole bunch of people. It takes one person, but it takes a whole bunch of people to find that one person. But that's just been, I think that's just been really my outlook. And it really helped me understand that life is not, just like we were talking about earlier, jobs are not guaranteed. Businesses are not guaranteed. Life is not guaranteed. And, we never know when something's going to happen. I know, this from, where, with what's going on in your home country. And it's you didn't ask for that. You weren't prepared for it. It just happened, and it wasn't your choice, but you've made a choice for your family to do something that put you in a safer position. And I respect that. And I think that's the healthiest choice you had in the moment. And this is the healthiest choice I have in the moment, is just to embrace life and to, not put off today what I want to do. It's if I want to do it, let's do it. And, we're not unreasonable. We don't, we pay our rent on time. We pay our bills on time. We do everything else. We don't have a lot saved, but we both like traveling. We both like experiencing different places and going different places. And so if we have an opportunity to do it, whether it's just a 2-day, 1-night weekend down at the beach locally, whether we fly somewhere to go, or go visit friends or something, it's like, and that's again why we don't like our calendar filled up. It's because we like the times where we can just spontaneously go, let's go do this. If we find a good deal, if our friends are, close by or have an opening, and it's just like, yeah, let's make it happen. Let's do it. And we don't need to plan 6 months out or a year out or 3 months out. And usually when people ask me for that, I'm like, I have no idea, because if I'm getting my transplant, I won't be able to do it, so I can't commit to, you might ask me to do something in the end of November, beginning of December, and I'll be like a tentative yes, but it might turn into a no because I might not be here for it,
Yeah. And what I love, like, I'm really encouraged about because of you, because you're still here, you're still doing everything. So you're not just, as you told, blaming somebody else or trying to find whose fault it is. So, like, I see so many, healthy people who always cry for something they don't get, about that they don't have a new phone, a new car, or all this stuff. So yeah, just after listening to your story and like in general, even after like seeing the war going on in Ukraine, so like I have the only one question: does it really matter? So nothing else matters, if you don't have your life. So
no. And worrying about not having it takes you away from enjoying it while you're here.
Yeah.
And that to me is really the most important thing. I mean, I think we, at least for my wife and I, we kind of learned it during COVID, just how we actually, I know it tore a lot of people apart, but for us, it actually brought us closer together. We had a great time being together all the time. We made, hired musicians to play on Zoom with us. We'd have like little dinner parties on Zoom with our friends. We'd dance outside and, have dress up night and date nights and everything just at the house. And, we just did like little things like that, and we really enjoyed it so much that when I was diagnosed towards the end of, the major lockdowns and everything in November of 2020, but that whole thing, I think, just reminded me that, this is an opportunity for us to just embrace the situation we're in and decide what we want to do. Kind of like when we had COVID. I mean, we could decide what we wanted to do. We could decide that this was horrible and we wanted to go out, and we missed going to our local places. But now we learn that like our local places are different because some of the servers aren't there that we enjoyed the most. The musicians aren't playing like they used to, and so it's like, it's still so different and it's not what we would have had. So wanting something that you had before will never happen again. So don't worry about trying to recapture that. Focus on creating a new memory that you didn't know you even had the opportunity to experience. And when you do that, that's when I think you start realizing you can do more. You can go out, you can experience new things, meet new people, create new things, because you're not held back to what existed in the past. You're open to the possibilities of what is in front of you for the future.
And just before we started talking with you on the record, you told that you've just recently received this news that you had another granddaughter. And tell me, how did you feel when you became a grandfather for the first time?
Well, it was right before I was diagnosed, so it was still kind of the height of COVID, and we couldn't go to the hospital when our granddaughter was born, and this was 2 years ago, and we could not even see them in person. Like, they had an apartment with a balcony on the first floor, and we could go on the sidewalk and see them from like 10 feet away. but because we needed to get shots and everything for the baby, before the baby has their shot. So we had to do that, and we didn't get them in time because the baby came early. So we needed to wait like 2 weeks before we could actually hold the baby and everything. So it was a little bit, it was a great experience. We actually were in California because my wife's mom was in the hospital then. So we flew to California and we're out with her for a few days while the baby was born, because it came like a week and a half early. So it was kind of like a shock when we got back, and I'm like telling my wife, there's nothing you could have done. We couldn't have gone to the hospital. We can't be around the baby anyway for another week and a half. It's like, it's all good. It doesn't matter where we are. It's the same situation. So this time it was, she was scheduled for a C-section tomorrow, but then woke up yesterday morning and had started having some bleeding, and they thought everything was going to be fine and we're going to send her home. And then she started having contractions, and they're like, we got to do a C-section today. So yesterday, our granddaughter was born, and it's just like, it's just a great feeling. We're heading down there now, right after I'm done with you, and going to get to see our granddaughter, and hopefully, mom and dad and the baby will all be home tomorrow. So we'll all be there to help out and get to see the new grandbaby, hopefully tomorrow.
So I can really see that you're very happy. So
oh yeah, well, there's nothing like the pure innocence of life. I joke. My 2-year-old granddaughter she loves playing with these magnetic tile blocks, and because she can build stuff together, and I kind of like playing with that kind of stuff. And she's a good sharer, and I try and be a good sharer, but I bought like a whole nother box of tiles so that when I'm with her this week, that I can actually, like, we have more that we can build and build taller things and bigger things. And so it's just like, I have so much fun, but like what I love seeing about her is she's not encumbered to, like, I look at a picture and I need to figure out how to do it. She just doesn't look at the picture and just starts putting pieces together and see how they go. And it's a great reminder to me not to always follow the instructions, but just to use my creativity and my vision to try and put things together in new ways that didn't exist before. And so I just love playing with her because I think she reminds me of so many important lessons in life. And I think if we really surrounded ourselves more with, I think, both younger people and older people as people in the middle, we would get a lot better view on how we should be looking at things and analyzing things, because we got the knowledge of the people that have been around, and we got the creativity and the naivety of the people that are just born in this world. And I think you put all that together, and it can bring so many opportunities to you.
Yeah, people always say that older people are wiser and they can teach you, but they always forget about how younger people can teach you and how kids can teach you. So yeah, I totally agree with you, and I'm still looking at my kid and learning practically every day. So,
well, one of my sayings is, I always want to be learning, because when I stop learning, I stop living.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what life is about. It's about learning. Every day of your life, and if you're not doing that, at least to me, it feels like I'm going to die.
Like, I have so many questions, and I really wish to have the sky as the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit. So let's jump to the rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
All right.
Skies or water?
What or water?
Skies.
Skies. I just think about that. That's a tough one for me.
Yeah, totally. Summer or winter?
Summer.
What are your favorite color and song, at least for this week?
I love blue. And favorite song, I think I might have posted this in our Slack group that we're in, but I think Jimmy Buffett's Son of a Sailor, I just listened to actually again this morning. And it kind of brings me back to, reminding me, like, just how connected we all are,
If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
I think I'd like to be able to read minds.
Okay. And who do you learn from in the community world? Name one person.
Man, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, totally. It's totally tough. But it's a rapid fire. You don't have to think a lot.
Okay, well, I'll just say Jenny Weigel right now.
Got it. And one more super quick question. Name two people whose community life journey you are happy to hear about.
Well, I'm loving learning about yours. and then there's a woman, Erin Staples, I think is her name. And she is, I don't think with any company right now. I think she was with Orbit before. Yeah. And I'm really, I'm actually talking with her tomorrow, and I'm really loving what I've learned about her journey so far and where she's been and what she's looking to do and how she looks at things. So those are two people, I think. Okay,
got it. And is there one question that I definitely should have asked you but didn't?
Maybe what my favorite meal was.
What is your favorite meal?
I love at my little, well, I will tell you my favorite appetizer is lump crab that I get at Ocean Prime Restaurant here in Tampa and Orlando. They have one. But my favorite meal that I can get at a lot of places is grouper sandwich, which is pretty common here in South Florida, but not in too many other places.
Now, we fixed it. So that's exactly how it works. We can always fix things in life. So yeah. And, Tim, when I was like, I was really struggling to find amazing people in the community, like who are men who to talk to, because there are mainly women in this sphere. And I was talking to Carrie Melissa Jones about that, and she was like, "Oh, Tim McDonald, you definitely have to talk to him." And I don't know how it happened, but the same week you joined the CMX community and at least you become active there. And I was like, Carrie just told and Tim just become active. So really? And then we were here talking with you today. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving this time and for sharing your story. And like when we meet between two water coolers, that day I understood that we will have an amazing conversation, and we really did have an amazing conversation. So thank you very much for being so open for everything. And even though that you were talking about hard stuff, anyway, being positive about it and being like motivated, like, wow, I learned a lot from you. So thank you very much for being here.
No, thank you so much for having me, Yuri. It was such a fun time. I can't believe that we went over an hour, and it just feels like it's been 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's exactly how it's, when you have a good conversation, you always do not have enough time. So just, I want to have a second volume with you a little later. So
you just let me know.
Do it. I need you to be there. So I really need
we'll make it happen. And I can, after we're done recording, I can give you maybe a couple other men in the community space if you're not aware of that you might want to reach out to.
Cool. Thank you very much. Okay. So once again, it was amazing. Thank you very much, and see you in the community world.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.